Building integration kind of sucks. It takes a long time to build, it's expensive to maintain, and it breaks all the time. So let's talk about why. Let's talk about why building enterprise integration sucks. So, integration is what happens when you have a source system, you have a destination, and you write some glue code to stitch them together. Now, depending on your architecture, these go by different names. Maybe you know it as producer-consumer, or publisher-subscriber, or maybe client-server. But regardless, this is true for every integration ever. They all follow the same pattern. Producer, consumer, glue. And it doesn't really matter how you're building your glue code. Maybe you're using some drag and drop UI. Maybe you've got an integration YAML file where you do a bunch of field mappings. Maybe you're using your favorite integration framework to write a bunch of Java code. Or maybe you've got a GraphQL resolver. It doesn't change anything. It's still the same. Producer, consumer, glue code. So what's so wrong about that? Well, let's have a look. How integration gets built. Open parentheses. It's not quite that simple. Close parentheses. When we're building an integration, it all starts with a producer. Maybe they've got some data, or they've created an API. And along comes a consumer that wants to use that data, or use that API. So they write some glue code. Now, unfortunately, for the consumer, it's not quite that simple. In any kind of mid to large size organization, the landscape looks a little bit more like this. There's hundreds of different sources that they can go to, which, needless to say, for a consumer, can be a little bit overwhelming. There's this whole journey of discovery that you have to do across the enterprise just to track down which team and which system has the data or the APIs that you need to work with. Is it one system that you have to call, or is it multiple? What's their API built in? Is it OpenAPI, or is it SOAP, or is it Protobuf? Where's their documentation? There's just all this work you have to do before you even get to start writing a line of code. Now, our consumer's in luck. The producer, it's a REST API. And they're like, yes, I know this. I know what to do. So the producer gives them their OpenAPI spec. And that's when the work starts. The consumer fires up their IDE and they start writing a bunch of code. They take their API spec, they generate the client that they need, they do their mappings, connecting producer fields to consumer fields, they handle failures, they handle retries, they think about caching. There's a lot of work that they need to get done. But they get it finished and our consumer's done. Except it's not quite that simple. Often, consumers are integrating multiple APIs. So for our consumer, it looks a little bit more like this. Which really means they're back to having to deal with this. And they're like, "Rrr." So they track down their producers and they get about to doing some more work. They have to, again, grab the API specs and generate their clients and think about caching and think about mapping and connect this field to that field. Needless to say, there's a lot of work. But our consumer is finished. They've built their integration and they're done. Now, of course, it's not quite that simple. Across the organization, there's lots of consumers, and each of them is repeating this journey over and over. Each of them is tracking down the producers that they need, and tracking down their API specs, and generating their client code, and thinking about caching and failure and retries. Consumers do a lot of work when you're building an integration, which is a shame, because there's lots of them. Enterprise integration boils down to lots of consumers doing the same work over and over and over. So let's go back. We've got our producers, we've got our consumers, and everybody's wired everything together. Unfortunately, for our consumers, it's not quite that simple. Because producers, they're not static either. One of our producers releases version 2 of their API. And needless to say, for our consumers, it doesn't go well. And sadly, that's the state of enterprise integration as it stands today. Lots of consumers, all doing lots of repetitive work, tracking down producers and stitching together their APIs, all with glue code that's so brittle that it makes it really difficult for producers to ship changes. As long as we're building integration by gluing together producers and consumers, we end up with integrations that take a long time to build, are expensive to maintain, and break all the time. So, what are we going to do about it? Well, that's why we're building Catchy. Catchy is a semantic language and type system designed for integration. It keeps your systems decoupled so producers can make changes, and it allows software rather than humans to do all the complex discovery work that's involved in building integrations today. I'm excited to share it with you, so head over to taxilang.org and check it out.
Taxi's a language for building integration.
Orbital's our platform and it's how we pay our bills.
Please star our GitHub repos, it makes our mom so proud.